Well, hello, my friend. How are you? You're looking fantastic. Come on, have a seat, relax, take a load off. My name's Jedley, and this is Reading with Your Kids Rewind, moments worth resharing from the Reading with Your Kids podcast. You know, it's hard to believe that we just published episode number 1200 of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Since the podcast debuted in 2017, we've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of authors and experts in a number of different fields. Since October is Dyslexia Awareness Month, we decided to share some of the most memorable moments that address dyslexia. First up today is an interview that we had. It was first published on October 8th in 2020 with Dr. Kathryn Garforth. It was a really fascinating conversation, and if you love somebody who is struggling with dyslexia, you really want to go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and search out Dyslexia Awareness Month with Dr. Kathryn Garforth. It was published on October 8th, 2020. In this clip, Dr. Garforth tells us a little bit about what dyslexia is. Here's Dr. Kathryn Garforth. Are you able to describe exactly what dyslexia is?
Well, so there's a couple ways to approach that. There is what the public views as dyslexia, and that typically has to do with a reading disability. Now, professionally speaking, when you're talking about a disability in reading, that's a specific disability or a specific learning disorder in reading, right? And so if your child has a problem with reading and they get a psychoeducational assessment, they're going to have the diagnosis of the specific learning disorder in reading because that's the current term used diagnostically. Dyslexia refers to a specific type of problem with reading, and that's decoding of the words. So if you remember earlier, I was talking about how reading can be boiled down into two main skills, the word identification and the language comprehension. Someone with dyslexia struggles with the word identification and not necessarily the language comprehension. So where they are struggling is trying to figure out what those letters on the page say and how to put those together. A large weakness that dyslexics most commonly have is something called a weakness in phonological awareness, specifically phonemic awareness. Now, phonological awareness is the awareness of sounds within our spoken language, and each language has a different set of phonemes. The English language, depending on where you live, has anywhere from 40 to 44, and that depends on dialect and accent. These phonemes are something that we need to increase the sensitivity in students with dyslexia so that they can notice the subtle differences between the sounds, and that's an area that they can struggle with. And then also being able to pull those sounds apart. So if I were to say cat in its individual phonemes, it would be k, a, t, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what we're getting kids to do when they're sounding out words. We're asking them to say the sound that each letter makes. So when they see the word cat, they're going to say C. Okay, well, C makes the sound k, k. A makes the sound a, T. T makes the sound t. So now they have k, a, t. But then they need to learn how to blend those sounds together into that word so they can recognize the word, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a skill that we can work on, and these are things that we can do in a very fun, play-based manner with our children. This is a skill that phonological awareness begins developing in the preschool years, and the best ways that parents can help their children develop these skills is by doing a lot of rhyming and games and reading books full of alliteration. The English language and how we write our English language system, we use a phoneme and an alphabetic approach. So our language is based on having letters represent sounds or graphemes representing phonemes. As I said, the English language has between 40 to 44 phonemes. But as most of you should know, there are 26 letters in the English alphabet. But our problem is there are more sounds in the English language than there are letters in our alphabet. Now, to make things even more complicated, there's more than 200 different ways that we represent those sounds by letter and letter combinations. So this is why the English language is so complex to teach, because to become a fluent reader, you need to have an awareness of these sounds. And if you learn the logic behind them, you can actually understand a lot more about why English words are spelled the way that they're spelled.
Dr. Garforth shares so much more information. Once again, if you love somebody who is struggling with dyslexia, you want to be sure to check out the full episode. It's called Dyslexia Awareness Month. It was published October 8th, 2020, and you can find that on our website, readingwithyourkids.com. It's also available on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Ghana, Himalaya, Podchaser, Stitcher, you kind of get it. Wherever you find your podcast, you can find the Reading with Your Kids podcast and our conversation with Dr. Kathryn Garforth. Right now, we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to sit down and speak with Reyna Marder Gentin. She wrote a beautiful book. It's a middle grade novel called My Name is Layla. Again, if you love somebody who's struggling with dyslexia, maybe one of the ways you can help them feel more comfortable about it and help them develop a love of reading is to give them a chance to read about somebody who themselves is struggling with dyslexia. That's what My Name is Layla is all about. Now, this episode was first published in June 3rd, 2021, and the name of the episode was School Will Never Be the Same. Here's Reyna Marder Gentin. Tell us about Layla. Who is this star of your book?
So Layla's a 13-year-old girl with undiagnosed dyslexia. And at the beginning of the novel, she's getting ready to start 8th grade. She's kind of dreading it because she's a very conscientious student and a good kid, but she doesn't do well in school and she hates disappointing her mom. She's growing up in a complicated household. Her father abandoned her mom and Layla and her brother when she was small, and her mom is working night shifts as an emergency room nurse to keep the family afloat. So there's a lot going on in her house. And when she gets to school this year, when she starts out, she's got a new English teacher, somebody that's new to the school, who doesn't have any preconceived notions about her and about her capabilities, and he sees her potential. And it kind of scares the bejeebus out of her. And she's challenged, and she starts to rise to the challenge, and then she makes some poor choices that she has to rebound from. But it's a hopeful book, and it's, I think an inspiring story. And, yeah, that's who Layla is.
Yeah. I'm wondering what kind of conversations. I know that most kids are going to read Layla, My Name is Layla, on their own independently. But I think that this would be a great book for a family to read together, maybe co-read and talk about over the dinner, at the dinner table. What kind of conversations do you think families could have as they were experiencing My Name is Layla together?
I think there's a couple big points I hope that they would, address. First is she could have gotten help so much earlier if she had been able to ask for support. And I don't know how kids do that. I really don't. But there's got to be a way, and there's got to be a way for parents and teachers to be receptive and open to that, so that, when a kid does feel like they're having difficulty, she knew she was having problems. Like, she says in the book, my brain doesn't work the same way other people's brains work. She's not oblivious to it, but seeking out support in a productive and, reasonable way, as opposed to the way she ends up with her cry for help, is certainly key. And I think the other, big thing that I would hope, and I hope this book gets read not just by kids with learning differences in their families, because it's really a book for everybody. And the big point of it is that everybody has something, right? There's always, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. You don't know who's suffering with a chronically ill parent, or with a financial problem, or with a mental illness. I mean, there's everything out there, and everybody has something. This idea of the perfect family, and the kids that are all doing great, and the parents are all doing great, hopefully for some amount of time in everybody's life, that's the case. But there's always something. And, that's the big point that I hope people take away from it. I mean, she kind of idealizes, as I said, this family across the street, who is also the boy that she likes. And it turns out that he's got an executive functioning disorder. I don't know if that's not really disorder or whatever, an issue. So he's totally disorganized. He can't keep his locker straight. He can't write down assignments. He gets help, and he's completely comfortable with it. And, she finds out when she goes for her help, and there he is. He's in the learning center. He's in the resource center. He loves it there. He loves the woman that runs it, Mrs. Hirsch. She's the greatest. And, he's comfortable in his own skin because he's been getting help all the time, and nobody made a big stigma out of it. And, and she's shocked because he's in the perfect family. He's in the family that has dinner together every night at 6:30. How could he have a problem? But you know what? Everybody has a problem. And, I think that's the kind of thing I hope parents would, discuss with their children when reading the book.
Yeah, absolutely. That whole idea that we are connected, that we are family, that we share so much. We are all different, but I guess the one thing that we all share is the fact that none of us are perfect. Right. And we all need each other.
For sure.
Yeah. If you'd like to learn more about My Name is Layla, be sure to check out our entire conversation with Reyna Marder Gentin. It's called School Will Never Be the Same, and it was published on June 3rd, 2021. Dyslexia and other learning challenges affect kids differently, but one thing remains the same for all kids struggling with their learning challenge, and that is that parents need to be their kids' advocate. Micki Boas came on the show on August 23rd, 2020. She wrote a book, 1 in 5, How We're Fighting for Our Dyslexic Kids in a System That is Failing Them. The name of the episode is Fighting for Our Dyslexic Kids. And here is a very passionate advocate for her kid, Micki Boas. I'm really happy to have you on, and I'm excited to speak about this book, 1 in 5, and speak about I'm really bummed out that we have to speak about the fact that we're failing our kids with special needs. Why don't you begin by just giving us the overview of 1 in 5?
Yeah, thanks so much for having us and talking about this important topic, especially on our book launch day. Today we launched the book 1 in 5 into this world. So very excited to talk with you today. So yeah, I'll start out with my story and how I got to writing this book. As I mentioned, I live in Jersey City. I have 2 boys that have dyslexia. I saw them struggling in schools. I didn't know what was going on. And it was clear in first grade that my son was struggling. He was not keeping up with his peers. And as you know, proficient readers at age 7 is when you are hitting that milestone, and he was nowhere near it. And he was in a charter school, and we were able to get him diagnosed with dyslexia. And of those of your readers who don't know what dyslexia is, it's basically they have a difficulty with reading, and they are but they are highly intelligent. And so it is about reaching their full potential, and that's where the crux of our story starts to fall down. I thought that getting a diagnosis of dyslexia and attention issues would open up a world of possibilities, but I was wrong. He was only given 30 minutes of reading support that he needed a week to read in the critical years of reading, as you know, with your mission. And I asked for more support. Can I get more time? No. Is there more money for the teachers? No. Can I substitute teach so the teacher can get more training? No. And as a parent who wants the best for your child, that wasn't an acceptable answer. And so it took me 4 years, 4 lawyers, and 4 different school formats to finally get him the help he needed. And no parent should have to go through that. And so that's why I wrote this book, because there's a national education crisis for 20% of the students in the U.S. And I wanted to get to the root cause of why this was happening. And so as I started to talk to people about it when I had come out of the battle, I had no idea the numbers were so big. I had no idea. And it's a very lonely and isolating battle. So, thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk to more people about it. And as I started talking to people, I realized I talked to Simon & Schuster and I said, hey, let's get together and go figure out the reason. And so I went across the country, actually talked to people in Boston, North Carolina, Seattle, everywhere around the country. And I realized that we were all facing the same 3 issues. It comes down to the lack of funding, the lack of early intervention, and the lack of teacher training. And as you know, there's such a small window to catch this and to give it the support that it needs. And because dyslexia is an invisible disability, the support really falls on the parents to speak up and to identify this gap and this concern to your teachers. And I believe the teachers want to help and want to provide the resources, but because of our lack of funding, they don't have the money to support them. And so if you're not reading proficiently, as you know, by 3rd grade, the dropout rates are 4 times higher. And children with dyslexia are twice as likely to drop out of high school than people in the general population. So my hope with this book is that I can provide a sense of community, a sense of urgency, and by telling, there's 19 other stories featured in this book besides mine, that we can figure out ways to use innovation and ingenuity to get our kids to read.
If you'd like to hear the entire episode with Micki Boas, please go to wherever you find your podcasts and find the Reading with Your Kids podcast and find the episode named Fighting for Our Dyslexic Kids that was published on August 23rd, 2020. One of the great things about hosting the Reading with Your Kids podcast is I never really know where the interviews are going to take us. I have a general idea of where we're going to start and where I think we're going to end up, but sometimes our interviews take a huge swerve. And that's what happened when I interviewed Jessica Dawn. Jessica came on the show to celebrate her book, Stay at Home, which was inspired by the COVID-19 pandemic. But about halfway through the interview, she revealed that she had been diagnosed with dyslexia, and she actually thought that dyslexia was a gift. And I just couldn't resist asking her to expand on that, because I think that looking at dyslexia and other learning challenges as a gift is really a great gift that we can give to our kids. Here's Jessica Dawn. Now, you also illustrated your books.
Absolutely. I actually consider myself an illustrator first. Mm-hmm. For me, reading and writing can be a little difficult sometimes. I've been diagnosed with dyslexia, which I find is a great gift. And so I express myself more easily in art and pictures. So I actually start my books by illustrating them first, and then I find the word and the poetry to go with it.
I can't let this get by. You said that you consider your dyslexia a gift. Please expand on that.
Absolutely. There's a lot more research in the last few years about neurodiversity and how it's just a different way of seeing the world. You can see the big pictures. You can see the connections. And I've had a very successful career as an artist, so I consider it absolutely a blessing and a gift.
So, because I know that there's a lot of families out there who have kids who are dealing with dyslexia and other learning challenges, and I think it's really a gift when we're able to help families see that as a gift and not as a disability.
Absolutely.
You talked about you're looking with dyslexia, you're looking at the world in a different way. Can you kind of help me? Can you help me understand how it is you're seeing the world and how it's different than the way I'm looking at it?
Yeah. So to explain it as clearly as I can, I basically don't really see in 2-dimension. Like nothing's really particularly flat for me. The words are fairly active coming off the page. When I look at a pattern or in the trees, I can find repeat patterns and I can find sequences very easily. And so when I look at the world, I just see how it connects together and how it flows. And I connect things that maybe other people don't connect.
Wow. That ability to see patterns where other folks can't, you're right, that can be an incredible gift and an incredible advantage. I'm just, as I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking what an exciting time that we're approaching a time where and you know, hearing that dyslexia, ADHD, that these things are gifts. You're not the first person who said that. And I'm glad about that, because we're starting to understand that differences aren't necessarily a disability. A difference is a difference. And, you know, we need different people. You know, here in New England, we used to have this guy who played on a football team named Tom Brady. And he was wonderful at what he did. But if the whole team, if we had a team of Tom Brady's, the team wouldn't be very successful. We need different people doing different things. And
absolutely.
And how I'm imagining I was thinking how much different would school look like if a teacher were able to sit down and go, okay, well, Jessica doesn't see the words in the same way that Keisha sees the words, so we're going to teach Jessica differently, and to help her make the most of her gifts. What do you think that classroom might look like?
Absolutely. I've actually had this experience. I come from a long line of educators, and I worked so hard in high school and elementary school and helped a lot of teachers understand what it looked like and how to help. And then when I got to college, I went to design school. I ended up being almost a straight A student because it was all geared towards the art and creativity and presentation. Just because it's difficult for me to read and write, like I'm still a good oral presenter. I can still do a sales pitch.
I really love to encourage you to find the entire conversation we had with Jessica Dawn. The episode is called My Dyslexia Is a Gift, and it was published on July 5th, 2020. Once again, you can find all of our episodes at our website, readingwithyourkids.com. The podcast is also available on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to thank our guests, Dr. Kathryn Garforth, Reyna Marder Gentin, Micki Boas, Jessica Dawn. I want to give a special thanks to Michael Murphy, our intern from Curry College, for helping to select today's highlights. And most of all, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids Rewind.